Hello YouTube and welcome to another GV anime review. Now, unfortunately, yet again, I have to start this review with a more serious note. It's currently 9:46 a.m. on Friday, July 15th, and about an hour and a half ago when I woke up, I read about the terrible news about what happened in Nice last night. My thoughts and prayers are definitely with the people of France and more specifically with the family of the victims. But we must continue, and today I am reviewing the second season of Terra Formars, which is called Terra Formars Revenge. When I did a review of the first season a long time ago, I really wanted a second season to continue the story. And with that horrible censoring at the start of the first season, they couldn't do worse, right? So the story of Revenge continues where the first season left off, with our different divisions still stranded on Mars, trying not to get killed by the roaches. But now in the second season, it seems that the roaches aren't the only thing that opposes them. My first positive point was one of the reasons that I really wanted a second season of Terra Formars. And that was number one. In the second season, we finally get to see the strongest fighter of the crew. Or at least he is according to the Mars ranking. Next to number one, I was also glad that Keiji returned to the series, since he was one of my favorite characters in season 1. And here he also played an important role instead of having his own arc like in the first season. On that note, I also have to mention that the second season puts a lot more focus on completely new characters that get introduced, instead of building further on the important characters of season 1. I mean, they are still there, but they don't get as much time and development as they got in the first season of Terra Formars. Continuing on the characters, I have to say that some of the backstories of these new characters were pretty sad. That's something that Terra Formars fortunately kept from the first season. To me, the saddest backstory of this second season came from Alexander. He had, in my opinion, the most compelling backstory combined with what happens in the anime. Now, except for him, the other backstories didn't came to the level of those from the first season. They were still good, but by far the best arc of this entire anime was the one of Adolf from the first season. I really liked Adolf and his story, and this season's characters didn't came close to his level. Next point was that this season diverted a bit away from the first, since in this season we don't only get the battle of man versus roach like in season 1, but also the fight of man versus man. And this double fight added an extra layer to the anime. Whilst on one hand we still saw some epic fights between our characters and the roaches, they also had to fight each other in order to survive. And the last thing I want to say isn't really a positive point, but more of an overall thought that I can't get out of my mind about Terra Formars. How doesn't this anime cause more controversy when it comes to the design of the characters? If we're all very honest for a moment and look at the design of the roaches, don't they look suspiciously much like the stereotype of a black person? I am not trying to be racist here, I want to make that crystal clear. But if I look at the roaches with an objective eye, I can't help but make that link. I mean, the roaches are big, buffed, and the whole facial structure of them resembles that of the black stereotype a bit too much to be coincidence in my opinion. And if we look at the other side of the perspective, Joseph, number 1, super strong, blonde hair, blue eyes, comes from pure bloodlines, Am I the only one who immediately thinks of the Aryan race as portrayed by the Nazis in the Second World War? Again, it's just too much coincidence that the strongest character of this anime looks like that. But remember, these are my personal thoughts on this matter, and it could be total bullshit. Now the negative side of this review, because I think that everyone who watches anime has seen or read some of the reactions that were released after the first episode of this second season. And yes, there were quite some problems with this second season, like the animation. I think that everyone who watched the first episode of this season had a heart attack whilst watching it. Why did Leiden Films, the studio, completely change the animation and art style of Terra Formars? The whole dark and depressing atmosphere that was present in the first season was gone through this new and simpler kind of art. I liked the dark animation of season 1, like probably almost every Terra Formars watcher. Now you could say that there wasn't that horrible censoring anymore from the start of season 1. But that's not really helping here, since there was nothing left to be censored. Where was all the gore, the violence, the gore, the blood? That's why we watched the first season of this anime. That's what made Terra Formars enjoyable to watch. But now in this second season, they just erased all of the gore, almost all of the blood, and therefore the violence and the fights were so much lamer than in the first season. Now, for all the gore that they erased from the anime, something came in return. The comedy. Why? Why put such lame ass comedy in an action horror anime like Terra Formars? I wouldn't have minded some comedy in this second season, but it was so stupid. The cringe was so real. It was like they took the first season and flipped it over completely. Let's get rid of the dark animation, the blood, the gore, and the overall depressing mood of the anime, and let's replace it with simple, more colorful animation and lame comedy. Did they do that to apply to a broader public? Leiden Films made quite the misjudgment here, because they lost the interest of all the original watchers. And my final negative point is the same like in my review of the first season. The open ending. The biggest fight of Terra Formars still has to start. Now, if I really want a third season, depends on the way that Leiden Films would take this series. If they continue on the path that they are now, it doesn't have to for me. But if it returns to the old standards, then hell yes, I want to see a third season of this anime. The question also remains if they can make a third season, since I can kind of feel that the profits of this second season aren't massive. So as a conclusion, you can look at this second season from two different perspectives. If you look at it and compare it with the first season, it's crap. From the animation to the backstories to the overall mood, this second season was of way lower quality than the first. But if you look at this season independently from the first, it was still okay. But I can't ignore the wrong that they did to this franchise. And that's why I'm going to rate Terra Formars Revenge at 2.5 out of 5 stars. If Leiden Films are going to make a third season, they better get their shit together and give this manga the anime adaptation that it deserves. Now, if your hunger for gore isn't fulfilled after this anime, which would perfectly be acceptable, I suggest watching Hellsing Ultimate. If you're not satisfied on gore and blood after that, then I don't know what will. And with that, I conclude my review of Terra Formars Revenge. As usual, you can find the full list of all my animes and reviews over at Anime Planet. As usual, I will put a link in the description box down below. Now if you want me to review particular anime from this list, please put it in the comments. Also, if you have a recommendation for me, put them in the comments as well. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, visit me on Facebook and subscribe to this channel for more reviews in the future. I will say arigatou gozaimasu and I will see you all in the next video.